Okay, so we are back, day 2 on Mishlei 24, pesukim 13 and 14. Echol b'ni davash kitov, v'nofes matok al chikecha. So eat honey, my son, for it is good. And I really should have said nofes, and honeycomb drippings are sweet on your palate. Kain de'e chochmah l'nafshecha. So too, you should know chochmah for your soul. If you found it, v'ish achris, and there is an end, and your v'tiklas lo tikaris, and your hope will not be cut off. Right. So straight up mashal. And our questions were plentiful. Okay. 1, why is it using a lashon tzivui to tell us to eat honey? Right. You don't need to be told to eat honey. It's sweet. Right. So it's weird that he's commanding him to do that. 2, the main question is, what is the mashal and nimshal? And there are a lot of elements of this. Why is chochmah being compared to honey if honey isn't the healthiest food? And we saw that there are pesukim in Mishlei that talk about eating too much honey and then vomiting. Right. So that's like, too much Halloween candy. 2, what, if anything, is being added with honey and honeycomb drippings? Why does it have to say dvash and no face? 3, or I guess 2c. Similarly, is there a difference between eating and then dripping on the palate, or are those just two, things for the same mashal? 2-4, why eat and know? Why can't you just compare honey with knowledge? Right? How much is the verb part of the mashal itself? 2e, what is de'e chochmah telling you to do? What is implied by saying no as opposed to the other verbiage it could use? Do you need a packet?
I do, because I brought my safer back.
Okay. 2f, the nimshal seems to add an element which is not present in the mashal. Right, because it adds this whole part yesh achris v'tiklas lo tikaris, so it's not exactly symmetrical, right? And to spell that out, if you decide not to eat the honey, so then you're just lacking honey. But if you pass up on the chochmah, then you won't have an achris and your hope will be cut off, right? So that's like a more severe consequence. All right, 3, what is meant by yesh achris? What is an end? Or our scroll translate as a lasting end. 4, what is the tikva that won't be cut off? Hope for what? What is the alternative, or what is the havamina? Meaning, why would your hope be cut off otherwise, or why would you think your hope would be cut off? 5, what's up with the kares vibe? We have tikares and nafshecha, which are very kares terms. 6, what is the soul in this context? 7, why imatasa? What does this qualification add or change? Right? It's funny, if you have found it. Well, you can't do it if you haven't found it. So what does it add? And who is the audience implied by b'ni? Right? Presumably this sounds like a universal idea. So is b'ni here because we're in a series of things that have to do with advice to the son, or is there like a more intrinsic reason why it says b'ni? Okay, so what was our idea yesterday? Anyone want to say?
Yeah.
I don't know if we had one specific idea, but we definitely had one approach.
Yeah, the approach was I remember one approach was like, if you. What sounds like you want to say something? No, I can't. I honestly like after.
Okay.
Okay. Well, one point we were making was that honey is something that's delicious to eat,
yeah,
but has bad consequences if you eat too much.
Yeah.
As opposed to chochmah, which is delicious to eat, but you can never have too much.
Right.
Yeah. We take the fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take the fantasy approach. Yeah. And we applied it to the Torah.
Okay, I'll be a פירוש on Ariel. Okay. You make a good rishon.
Sure.
You can add that to the Purim out of context quote.
We took the whole point of like the fact that like eating too much honey is really bad for you.
Yeah.
And like you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But when you're speaking to a child.
Yeah.
You want to take that emotion of the that the honey's so good and that really you shouldn't eat it, but you take that to learning Torah,
right,
and knowing what the chochmah is for you. That's like eternal.
Yeah, right. So just to elaborate a little bit more on that, is that every kid wants to be able to eat infinite candy, right? But the most kids know that if you eat too much candy, then you're going to throw up, right? So, so you tell your son, oh, eat honey, and that gets him all excited about the honey. But then he starts having all these reservations about, well, it's pleasurable, but like I have to like exercise moderation and stuff. But then you transition to Chochmah and you say, oh, not only is it sweet, but you could eat as much of it as you want. And it's going to have an actual good, not just a pleasurable experience. And it's going to prevent an actual bad of your hope being cut off, which we said is very much in line with the way that the Rambam understands Olam Haba, where Olam Haba is a natural result of the actualization of your intellect here, not a reward, right? So like to the extent that you build your soul through Chochmah, then it will have an achris, and to the extent that you don't, it will be lacking, Okay, I think those were our main ideas, right? And we saw this in Metzudas Tzion, yeah.
Can you explain the mashal just by itself?
The mashal by itself is, there was one more element. Yeah, okay. So the mashal is, I mentioned, I kind of posited from the Matzasa, is that's how you get honey, is that you encounter honey. Like it's not something that it's not a regular thing that you have in your like kitchen at home, so you chance upon it in the forest or you chance upon it in the marketplace. And if you found that, you would definitely acquire it because you want that honey. And you're gonna just involve yourself in it for the pleasure. So that's the mashal. Okay. And then the nimshal is we said that the practical application is we pass up opportunities to partake of Chochmah all the time, right? In other words, really, anytime an opportunity for Chochmah comes your way, if you find it, you should totally just partake of it because it is going to be a pleasurable experience, guaranteed, and it's going to be an actual like good investment, and it's going to be preventing like a loss of soul in Olam Haba. Does that address whatever you were asking about for the mashal, or is there something that you're? Yeah,
it's not literally saying it as a command, right?
Okay, so you could say it's not literally saying it as a command. Okay, but I found this one little idea from Hooil Moshe, who is Shadal's unofficial student. He was not in Shadal's school, but he was a Ben Bias, as Daniel Klein says. He says he's the only one I found who says that it's a tzipui. Hisaneg b'ma'adane sha'a im efshar lacha ve'im zeh shum ra. This is literally a quote from Rabbi Moskowitz. Okay, is that if you find a pleasure and there are no consequences, then you should definitely partake of it. And Rabbi Moskowitz would always quote, I don't know where it is, and it's very hard to find things in the Yerushalmi, but there's a Yerushalmi apparently, I have looked it up before, I think it's in Brachos or in Peah, that says, that basically says something to the effect of, you are going to be punished by God for every pleasure in Olam Hazeh that you could have partaken of and you didn't. Okay, and Rabbi Moskowitz says obviously that does not mean pleasures that are usur, and it doesn't mean pleasures that are harmful. But if you have a pleasure and you refrain from partaking of it, and there are no consequences and it's not usur, so then it stems from some imperfection in you, right? Like why would you not partake of that pleasure? And we have to realize, and again, there's different societies and different personalities, and you have to know yourself. There is a part of the human psyche that is ascetic, that wants to deprive itself of pleasure. And if you're doing that for a purpose, right, like a Nazir who's trying to like rehabilitate his addiction to pleasure, or Ramban's version of Nazir, where you're like trying to attain a higher level of kedusha, so then it makes sense. But if you're just refraining from pleasure, that's like that's an imperfection. Yeah.
Is it like stopping to smell the flowers on the side of the road?
Yeah, exactly. This is something that God created, and he not only did he create this pleasurable thing, but he wired you to enjoy pleasure, And isn't there a Tosfos on brain nefashos that people always quote?
You made all the extra foods. It could have just been wine.
Yeah, anyone know where that Tosfos is? It's worth looking up. I could probably find six perak. Okay, probably easier is if I look at Bore Nefashos. I did get to move on to Pesach. I think that's where I heard this. Yeah. Long time ago though. All right. Not Yerushalmi. Here we go. This is probably it. This is good Tosfos to know.
I like that other toast where it holds an hour.
Speaking of Tosfos that help you enjoy pleasure.
I know, right?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's. Okay. All right. Okay. So he says, "B'rein nefashos rבות וחסרונם," who creates many souls and their deficiencies. Okay. I'm just going to read the Tosfos, and if we need to do the more, we will. Kamo lechem umayim she'efshar below him, like bread and water that is impossible to live without them. Al kol ma shebara. lahachayos behem nefesh kol chai. So that's the girsa he's the nusach he's doing, and on everything that he created to cause every living creature to live. Klomar al kolma sheba'olam shegam im lo bara'am yecholim ha'olam lachaya. So he's saying there's two categories. There's foods that you can't live without, and then there's foods that you can live without, and you're praising God about both of them. He's saying all the things that God created that you can live without. Shelo bara'am ki im l'tainug ba'alma. God only created them for enjoyment. Kumo tapuchim, like I don't know what were there apples in the Bali Tosfos land? I assume there were. I know there weren't apples in Israel, but or wherever that's what people say. It's that's a whole thing. Okay, every side point. Every year at Rosh Hashanah, for the first many years of yeshiva, when people would walk Rebbe home, they would always ask him about the tapuach in dvash thing, not from the side of the like simanim, but in the sense that tapuchim are not apples. Like in shiur shirim, it's some sort of other fruit. But that's a whole like academic. So yeah, okay. Okay, fine. Yeah. So that's this Tosfos saying that God created these things for pleasure, right? And pleasure is not intrinsically bad according to Judaism. So that's what the Ho'il Moshe is saying. Rak Moshe ata tar achar hanas gufacha vakesh gam chachma lenafshecha. And just like you, I don't know why I use the word tar achar hanas gufa. Just like you seek after the pleasure of your body, you should also seek chachma for your soul. Yeah. Tosfos is saying that there's two shvachos in B'rei Nefashos Rabos. So B'rei Nefashos Rabos וחסרונם is alluding to the fact that there are needs that we have, and we can't live unless we satisfy those needs. But then Al kol ma shebara lahachayos behem nefesh kol chai, so he says means all the stuff that God created that you could live without. Like the way that if you look at other species of animals, many of them have a very limited range of foods that they eat. So God could have created human beings where there are humans and then there are pellet trees that spit out pellets that you just eat, and then like it's these tasteless pellets, or they only have one flavor, but you have this huge world of like all this pleasurable stuff. And so we're praising God when we say that. We're praising God for that also. Yeah. So that's the I think that's the only one I found where he's actually, it is a literal tzivoy, but according to the way we explained it yesterday, it's the fact that he's commanding you to eat honey is supposed to elicit you don't need to ask me, don't ask me, you don't need to ask me twice. Like, of course I'll eat honey. But then with Chochmah, you should have the same reaction. Yeah. Okay. So, Mefarshim, yeah. So I know I said we're going to do the Meiri yesterday, but I wanted to start off with something different, which is Sadia Gaon, who you don't have in the packet. Okay. So Sadia Gaon, and I'll show you why I did Sadia Gaon. Okay. This is going to sound weird. Okay, when we first started off, but then as I read this, think to yourself, what methodological mistake did we make? Okay, yesterday, yeah, or methodological oversight. I won't call it a mistake, like an outright mistake. Since the senses, meaning like your body and your psyche, they sense the sweetness of honey, absolutely. And for this reason, the desire of eating is awakened more so than for other tastes. And the cause is ki hakaved, that the liver, asher ba murkeves tavas hamachal mizgo cham belach, is that the liver which has a compound or a mixture of the desire for food, and its constitution is hot and moist, and the sweetness of the honey aligns with the disposition of the liver. Therefore, the yearning of the soul for I think here he means soul, like the physiological soul, for the sweet taste is greater than any other taste. So just pausing here, what was he trying to explain here? Yeah.
He's trying to say how the mashal is actually could be taken literally and like this.
Oh, okay. So that is, I don't think he's saying that yet. He might say that later on. What question is he answering? Yeah.
Why sweet or supposed to other tastes?
Yeah, why sweetness is so appealing. Yeah, why do we desire sweetness, right? So he's saying that there is something natural in you that is that makes sweetness more attractive than other foods, right? I think we have our own. What's our own version of not our own version, our own current understanding of why we like sweet things? Okay, but okay, I guess you could say that, but I guess as nutritionally, I don't know this very well, but I've heard this though. Like why do we hardwire? Yeah. Okay, so why would that like evolutionarily be a?
Because the brain uses glucose.
Yeah, is that glucose is a readily available form of energy. Like that's the main thing that us not us, that you non-keto people use. Today is my 6-year ketoversary. Yeah, so yeah, thank you. So when you encounter like a concentrated form of glucose, then you're hardwired to like gobble it up to like, store the energy because it's converted also into fat, which can store it for a long time. So my point is that we have our own physiological explanation, and he's saying that as well. Okay, this is not the oversight that I'm mentioning, by the way, but this is a step that like I think is a good question. The fact that he's like asking this question is a good thing. Himshil hachacham es hachachma ledvash. So the chacham is comparing analogously the chochmah to honey, bifrat lenofes shabo, especially the drippings of the honey. Shahari amar dvash v'nofes k'dei lekarva el halomdim, in order to literally means to make it close to the learners, but that's like what we were saying yesterday, to speak to the emotions, to speak to the psyche of the learners. Amar, he says, Kashem she'aguf chash onig metikos hadvash mipnei shu matim lo. He's saying just as the body, I don't know how he's using chash here. I assume from context he means yearns for the enjoyment of sweetness of the honey because it is in line with the body. Kach margisha hanefesh onig metikos hachachma. So too the soul. Now here he's talking about the rational soul, senses the enjoyment of the sweetness of Chochmah because it is in line with it. Okay, Lefisha hanefesh ner haguf v'hachochma ner hanefesh, because the soul is the lamp of the body and Chochmah is the lamp of the soul. Okay, I don't know what that means. You'll find that in this book, both of them are called light. V'af yoser chashuvim min hadvash l'guf shnemar mutukim min dvash, and Chochmah is more chashuv to the nefesh than dvash is to the guf, as it says, it's sweeter than honey. Ki nefesh shihi or haguf kiven she'asechel hu shemeir osa, since the soul, which is the light of the body, and the intellect is that which illuminates it. Lefikach nase hamashal shemetikus hachachma metuka mi metikus advash. Therefore, it's saying that the sweetness of chochmah is sweeter than the sweetness of honey. Okay, pause here for 1 second. Okay, we still haven't gotten to the point I want to highlight yet. What is he trying to explain now? How is he extending this approach to the mashal, to the nimshal? Yeah.
I mean, with this kind of not really a good answer, but
you can say it if you want. You don't have to. I mean, I'm not going to force you to say bad answers.
Okay, so what I'm getting from this is that like it's kind of using honey as like a way of like remembering this thing for Chochmah.
Yeah. Okay, I think he is saying more than that. Yeah. I mean, it does function that way, but I think he is using more than that. Yeah.
The body craves honey because it like needs it in some way.
Right.
And so too the intellect or the nefesh, whoever craves Chochmah because it needs it.
Okay, right. So in other words, the reason his whole explanation is the reason why honey is sweet is because it serves an actual physiological function in the body. So the desire for sweetness is a healthy desire, which when satisfied gives you an enjoyable experience as well. So he's saying there is a similar thing, even greater, to the enjoyment that you get when you learn Chochmah. And I think that is something that like, I think mostly because we have bad experiences in school, then most people will view learning as like a not pleasurable or as like a foreign pleasure, but he's emphasizing the fact that there's a natural, like Aristotle says in the opening of Metaphysics, all men by nature desire to know. There's a natural curiosity. Anyone know the raya that he brings? This is like the only part of metaphysics that I really know. Yeah, he says that of the 5 senses, the sense of sight is the one that is I guess we would say the most primed to get information. Like all the senses get information, but people enjoy looking at things, And so I don't think he says with babies, but I think babies is a good example. Babies will just love looking at things because there's a natural, he says that comes from the natural curiosity, that you're hardwired to like want to know stuff, and sight is like the primary vehicle of that when you start off, Okay, so I think that's a different approach than what we were taking, because we were just focusing on the pleasure. He's focusing on the fact that the pleasure is a sign of the fact that this is a natural need that is built into your constitution. Okay, now he says something which reveals our methodological oversight. It praises one sweet thing over others, meaning honey over other foods. Because honey, I think yisparik here, which literally means to break, I think he means is digested or metabolized, and becomes the substance of your bones and your flesh and milk and your skin. I don't know what basar and or is, and other things. Chochmah chomer l'seichel, and chochmah is the material for your intellect, uletzedek, and for your righteousness, uletahara, ulekedusha, and for purity and for holiness, ulehanhaga, and for behavior, ulekosher, ulemidin, I think lamdinios, and learnings, ulefikach amar lanafshecha, and that's why it says for your soul. Okay, so how is he characterizing honey here?
It's material for a goof.
It's material for the goof, right? So what mistake did we make in our analysis of the honey?
We thought it was something just lost.
Yeah, but what should we have done? Yeah.
Well, we kind of like, for some reason, we took the premise of like, there's like a negative consequence without asking the question of like, all right, well, we know there's a negative consequence. Is there like
correct
effects that
so in other words, we first of all, we assumed that tov meant it was a good experience, right? Not that it's actually beneficial. And he's saying it's actually beneficial. And we should have asked the question, what did they think about honey, right? We just projected our own experiences with honey into this thing. And we did not ask, what did they think of honey? Now, if you want to understand, I don't know if we what we can get. I mean, if you want to understand what Shlomo Melech thought of honey, you would look at other pesukim about honey. But if you want to understand what the Mefarshim thought of honey, where would you look? And this is another good methodological principle. Specifically, who would you look at? Who? Which person in human history?
Human history?
Yeah, to understand what the Rishonim and Gaonim held about honey. Galen. Okay, right, Galen. So Galen was the Rambam has a nickname for him, like the whatever the top doctor or whatever. But so he was he was a contemporary of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and Marcus Aurelius. All right, 129 to 216 CE. Greek physician, surgeon, philosopher with Roman citizenship, considered to be one of the most accomplished of all medical researchers of antiquity. Galen influenced the development of various scientific disciplines, including anatomy, physiology, pathology, pharmacology, and neurology, as well as philosophy and logic. So the theory of the four humors, of how there are four like fluids in your body, and the proportion of those fluids is what determines your health and your character. Is this familiar?
No.
Okay, so the four fluid, this is just good background knowledge to know in general, was blood, black bile, yellow bile, and phlegm. Okay, and these don't mean what we think. Like, it's not like you're filled with phlegm, but they believe that they call them the four humors, not humor, but like humor is a fancy old word for like fluids. And they held that you had, just like there's four elements, then there were four humors in the body that corresponded to these four elements, and the different proportions would influence your personality, your midos, and also your health. Okay, and this is so entrenched in our terminology. We still use these terms. Okay, so for example, when we call someone who is sad melancholy means bile, and melan means black. Okay, so melancholy means you have excess black bile. Okay, so we use that, or let's say like I think phlegmatic means having an unemotional and stolidly calm disposition. So they believe that if you had too much phlegm, then that's how you had that. Or sanguine comes from blood, like, that's the source of blood. Optimistic or positive, especially in an apparently bad or difficult situation. So like these things, like in the same way that like Aristotle influenced for good and for bad, like, centuries of science. Galen influenced centuries of medicine. And so I did not have time. I only thought about this morning, so I didn't have time to like look, but I did ask ChatGPT to give me quotations from Galen's writings on the properties and benefits of honey. So
which GPT?
I'm so proud.
What was that?
3.5.
Whatever comes up when I search for it. I don't know which version I'm using. Honey 2 is an so this is from On the Properties of Foodstuffs, which I actually did look to see in my volume of Galen, but it didn't have this book in it. Honey 2 is an excellent remedy for many diseases, especially coughs, diseases of the throat, and ulcers of the mouth and wounds. So medicinal, okay? Honey is a good thing, being warm and moderately moist, very nourishing. It is good for those who are in good health and for those who are weak and for those who are recovering from illness. It is also good for the elderly because it is easily digested and assimilated, and it is also good for children. Honey is the best of all sweet things and is also the most wholesome. It is better than sugar and other sweet things because it is more easily digested and assimilated by the body. Honey has many healing properties. It is good for wounds, ulcers, and other skin diseases. It is also good for sore eyes, and it is good for the stomach and the bowels. You've never seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So the grandfather in that has this thing with Windex. Oh, sorry, it's Windex, right?
Windex.
Yeah. And he like believes that Windex is like this thing that can like solve all problems. So I mentioned yesterday, my grandfather was a beekeeper. Growing up, honey he did everything with honey. Like, so when we would get like, when we were sick, he'd give us honey. When we got scraped knee, he would put honey on it. It was like, honey was like and I don't think he got it from Galen, but like, but the point is this presents a completely different picture of honey than what we were saying, right? So this characterization of honey is the ultimate substance, which is not only enjoyable, but is medicinal. It's good for you when you're healthy. It's good for you when you're not healthy. The only thing is if you eat too much of it, then you could get sick. Just like if you take too much medicine, then you can get sick. But or if you eat too much food, you could get sick. So I think that's like a completely different way of approaching honey than what we assumed. We just projected our own understanding of honey into onto the pasuk, and I think that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was only Sadigon that made me. By the way, you can see it seems like Sadigon is using the same terminology, in many of these ways from Galen. So I think that's just like a big thing that we have to be aware of is not doing like anachronistic readings where we project modern understandings of things back then instead of asking what they thought. Now, here's the thing. It's possible that Sadigon was doing this also, that Sadigon assumed that his modern day medicine is what Shlomo HaMelech understood. I don't know how much knowledge we have of what Shlomo held about honey. Yeah.
In our defense, I do remember we did look at other pesukim about honey.
Right. We did do that. Correct.
We did do that.
Right. But I think
the question, we should still ask the question. Like I would have kind of just phrased the question like, other than the negatives, are there positives?
Right. So I think we did, just to clarify the mistake, you're right. We did look at other pesukim, but we looked at it to find rayas for the way that we were already viewing it. At least that's what,
and then we applied that idea to here also. Of eating, like eating too much honey, which is what the other person was talking about.
Right.
Nothing here suggested that.
Exactly. So now we can answer it even better. Why is he commanding his son to eat honey? Because it's actually good. It's actually good for you, and that's that's a different meaning. Yeah.
We got to redo the pasuk.
Well, okay. So here's the thing. Thankfully, this does not undermine our idea, because at the end of the day, honey is still the most pleasurable thing, but it could be that there are dimensions of the idea we're not getting from it. Yeah.
I think we were trying to say, the analogy doesn't line up perfectly because honey has this negative, whereas Chochmah doesn't, and we were talking about that.
Yes, right.
But now it's like, that actually just lines up nicely.
Yeah, it lines up more perfectly, right? So just as honey is the ultimate substance for the body, in the sense that it is enjoyable and nutritious, then Chochmah is the ultimate substance for the soul because it is enjoyable and metaphysically nutritious, right? Let's just finish the side to go and see if he says anything else. But Od shehadavash v'yeser mine hamazugos. Oh, sorry, mazonos. Yeah, okay. Mazonos. Enam mo'ilim ba'olam haba. Okay, now he says what we said about the actual added benefit of Chochmah, that honey and other foods are not beneficial for olam haba. Chochmah is beneficial in both worlds together. That's why it says you have a lasting outcome. That's interesting. Does that mean that it hastens like deterioration, or does it mean that it is quickly gone? What was that? Klios, yeah. Good question. I'm not sure.
I think it is digestion.
That was my first intuitive thing.
That is true.
But it says, yeah. Well, the reason why I'm curious about it is v'chachma timidis hakiyum, and chachma. I think he's saying it lasts forever. So I assume he's saying honey.
Maybe it's quickly digested and then
right. Okay, right. And then you're done with it. Right. Whereas chachma lasts forever. You can always go back to it, and it's and it also lasts in the haba. Ulfikach amar lo tikaris. That's why it says it will not be cut off.
Yeah, so that's the chachma won't be cut off.
The chachma, right? Oh yeah. Correct. The chachma won't be cut off. Not your soul won't be cut off. Yeah, that's a good point. So the way he approaches this, we never came up with a good term for what I used to call the list pesukim. There is a certain style of Mishlei where it will make a mashal, and it's not conveying one idea; it's conveying a list of benefits or a list of consequences. And this is one of the you can tell that from citing from the va'od. So all these benefits. So All right, so that was a very rich sadigo. Yeah,
very rich,
like honey. Yeah. Okay. Who should we go to next? What? Meiri? Okay, you want to do the Meiri? Let's do the Meiri. I just want to point out to you that I thought was funny. Rabbeinu Yonah says Kesuvim b'makom acher, that he wrote an explanation of this elsewhere, and then the footnote guy says lo matzasi. I didn't find this. Okay. Rabbeinu Bachia Parshas Vayachel. I might have said this before, but it bears repeating. If you ever want a Devar Torah on Mishlei on the Parsha, you should know that every single Parsha of the Torah, I think it's every single one, Rabbeinu Bachia begins with a Devar Torah on a pasuk in Mishlei, and it's usually based on Rabbeinu Yonah. Okay, because I think Rabbeinu Yonah was his Rebbe. Let's see. Bachia ben Asher. Let's just check that out. Jonah. Okay, I thought Rabbeinu Yonah was his Rebbe, but maybe not. So in Vayakel, he starts off with our pasuk, and there's a thing on it. I was thinking that this is too long for us to read right now. Evidently, but I was thinking that I might take a look at it if I have time, and if we're interested, then maybe we could do this some other time, or tomorrow if we're not doing Q&A. I don't know. Well, I'll ask about Q&A later. Okay, so Meiri. Let's go back to the Meiri. So what did the Meiri say? Was there Meiri on the last page or no? It starts on this page. Okay, so Meiri says, He'ara b'limud ha'chachma. Right. Yeah, right. I just want to read it again. Right. So that was the chiddush of the Meiri, is the toiling of chachma is compared to the eating of the honey. Okay. And we said that it was the chachma itself. So this is a question in my mind, which is, sometimes the toiling in chachma can be fun. But it could also be like a toil, right? Like depends on what stage of the chachma. Sometimes it's frustrating. Yeah.
The toiling itself is not fun.
But that's what he's saying here. He's saying that the toiling is enjoyable.
Okay, let me qualify that. Like there are different parts of the toil. Like obviously, it's strenuous, but the activity itself is entertaining. It's fun. Going to the back and forth. It's like you're playing like a basketball.
Okay, so hold on. Let's just finish reading. Make sure we're understanding right. Im matzasa, klamar im yadata vaday shematzasa. See, so what I would have said before that is I would say the toil is fun when it has a payoff, right? Because I think we all know, hopefully we all know at this point, that working hard to arrive at an idea and then discovering the idea is so much more enjoyable than being spoon-fed an idea, and so I would have read, if I just read the first part of the Meiri, I would say that the toil pays off. But he says ki matzasa, klomer im yadata vaday shematzasa. He sounds like it's almost like he said, we said like this is redundant because of course you found it. Doesn't it sound like what he's saying? Like if you know it, then certainly you have found it.
Well, I thought you were saying if you know that you have certainly found it.
What's the difference?
You're certain that you have found it.
So why does it need to say this according to him? I'm just missing that part.
You know what it's like? It's like I always ask people, how do you know like you found the right girl or whatever?
Yeah.
You just know when you know.
Okay. There's definitely there's definitely I'll tell you the thing that this is gonna be an awkward transition. I'll tell you the thing that Rebbe always says about with Chochmah, or his explanation is there's a pasuk in Mishlei that says Emor leChochmah achosi at, tell Chochmah that you are my sister, something Labina Moda. Hold on, let me just get the actual pasuk here. Emor leChochmah. Anyone know what shiur he says this in? Oh, does he?
No,
no. What pasuk? What shiur Rebbe says this in? I feel like it's in one of the basic shiurim because I know I've heard this many times. Emor leChochmah achosi at umoda labina tikra. So say to Chochmah, you are my sister, and call Bina a dear friend. Moda is a dear friend. Okay, so I think Rebbe said, you don't need to have proof that this person is your sister, right? That there's a certain intuitive kinship that you automatically feel with this person, and it's in the it's not in the analytical mind, it's in the intuitive feeling. And so I believe Rebbe was saying how with Chochmah you need to develop a familiarity with Chochmah that is on that level where you have a set, let's say for me it's the most clear in Mishlei, where I'm very familiar with Mishlei to the point where I know what a Mishleic idea feels like, so I know what I'm looking for, and I know when I found it. Yeah.
I was going to say something about the familiarity, but whenever my mom puts a shiur for her, she does a fair amount. She always talks about being familiar with it, and assuming that you know your sister, and not very, very well, this is my sister. Yeah. In that same type of way that you just have that familiarity with Chochmah. Right. And again, this is Rav Pesach has said the same thing with Svara also, is that part of what you're doing in your training in the derech is that you are you're getting individual ideas and you're learning how to come up with svaras, but the other thing is you're training your intuition to be able to differentiate between good svaras and bad svaras. You're training that intuitive sense to be okay, this is either this is a good svara or this is a good approach to a svara, and it's an intuitive feeling. How do we get onto that? Because of because when you know it. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, I hear that. All right. So I still don't feel like I understand this Meiri, because I don't know why he goes to the toreach b'Chochmah. To me, that's because again, eating honey, I would compare that to the consumption of Chochmah. The consumption of Chochmah is not the same thing as toiling to get it. So the fact that he makes that move to me is significant. Yeah.
Is it possible that toreach is pleasurable to the soul, but not the psyche?
That's interesting. The toreach is pleasurable to the soul, but not the psyche. So I would question what that means, because all the pleasure we experience in this world is psychological, right? That's the Rambam's thing in. I'm just going to get it here because easier to. Been looking it up online. In Chelek, the Rambam says about the pleasures of Olam Haba. The reason why we don't know it is, this is the Rambam to quote whenever someone claims that they have a spiritual pleasure. Which is he says, this is on the Kafach page Kuf Lamed Zayin. V'ata achal ledavar b'mashal tzizi. Daki kishem shelo yusak hasuma es hatzavayim v'lo yasik hacheresh es hakolos v'lo hasaris tavas mishgal. Just like a blind person cannot apprehend colors, nor can a deaf person hear sounds, nor can a eunuch have sexual pleasure, sexual desire. Kach lo yasigu hagufos hatanugim nafshim. So too, bodies cannot experience spiritual pleasures. Just as fish, he quotes this as water. Just as fish cannot recognize the element of fire because they are immersed in its opposite. Actually, this is water, right? Fish can't even recognize water. Okay. So too, in this physical world, we cannot know the spiritual pleasures. We have no pleasure at all in this world except for bodily pleasures. And sensory pleasures like eating and drinking and sex. Anything other than this is not extant or found by us. We cannot recognize it. And we can't even apprehend it at first analysis, except after a lot of analysis. So I don't know what a metaphysical pleasure would be that can be experienced here. Yeah.
Can you explain what exactly is your problem?
My problem is that the straight up mashal is eating honey.
Eating honey
is a mashal, and knowing Chochmah is the nimshal. And what we've been talking about is the pleasurable experience of grasping the ideas. But what he's saying is eating honey is a mashal for working to get Chochmah. So why working to get? Why is he making that step? Not the getting, the working to get.
He's saying knowing Chochmah is the working.
No, eating honey is a mashal for working to get Chochmah, not a mashal for knowing Chochmah. So I'm asking, well, why is he taking that move? Okay, let's go on the Meiri. Oh, so that was what we said yesterday. So some say that honey is an allusion to the higher levels of Chochmah, like the deepest ideas. And he brings a bunch of so milk is what you sustain kids on because of its fineness and subtlety, whatever. So mitzvos, in the action-based mitzvos, are the mazon of the souls of the masses. Honey is the sweetest of the foods. You can't give honey to babies. That's how we were interpreting it yesterday. And even an adult can't eat a ton of it. And if you eat too much of it, you're going to throw up. So honey is like the highest levels of Chochmah, which are only apprehendable by the elite individuals. And that's why it's promising to them the achris of hatikva. Yeah, David?
Well, to your question before about how this is similar to Torah learning,
yeah,
I have a snarky comment. I think I might actually have an idea.
Okay.
Also, I don't know if you're going to talk like the finding honey in the forest type of way. I do think that you do have at Torah, it's like a havamina and running the risk of getting stung eating this honey.
Right.
And if that's the case, I think that there is also, insofar as like being Torah in the learning, as much as like there may be positives or like enjoyment in even working through it.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of like, oh, it's going to be frustrating to me, this, to me, that. Other negative things, you're not getting stung by other negative things. Yeah. Then you're gonna be like, no, I'm just not gonna start altogether. So you start with the honey, even though there could be that potential bee sting in there.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea. I think that's a good possibility.
Yeah. I guess then it's the eating honey is not. It's not talking about the putting it in your mouth.
Right.
But the whole process.
It's the whole process of getting it. And I'll tell you the thing that allows your idea to have a basis. If the pasuk didn't say imatsasa, then I would say, why are you focusing on a secondary element of honey? Or why, same way I'm saying, why is Meiri focusing on the Torah? But the imatsasa in the nimshal suggests that, of course, the only way you get honey is like by finding it, and then you're going to find it with bees. Yeah.
I have another idea.
Okay.
On the toil and eating and eating.
Sure.
Honey. So based on what we said yesterday, like our prejudice, view of honey, like if you eat a lot in the mashal, we were saying if you eat a lot of the honey, it could be bad for you, right? Yeah. But if you transition that to learning, eating a lot of honey is bad for you, but the toil of eating a lot of the honey is good for you. Meaning it's physically bad for you, but you want to take that emotion of it tastes really good, but it's gonna get you throw up. Yeah. But toiling for the the Chochmah of learning, that is really good. Meaning like I'm just trying to compare the muscle.
I hear what you're trying to do. You're I hear what you're trying to do. So I think I think my problem is still.
I'm trying to just get the mashal first before
I think this is more a problem on the Meiri than on you, but the Meiri still has to confront the fact that it's describing the eating of the honey as being good and sweet, right? So like that's still why I'm perplexed by the use of toil. Can we get an idea though, really quickly for this about the honey is the highest levels of ideas, and just like you don't have it when just like you don't give honey to babies, and it's going to be harmful if you eat too much of it, so too with the highest levels of ideas. I mean, I understand not giving it to, if you, there's the highest levels of ideas are harmful. Oh, okay, let's take that, right? Is that I think that there is a feeling that, of course, the most important ideas aren't going to be harmful. So that's why people rush headlong into it, right? But there's so much literature in the Masorah on how getting ideas that are these loftiest ideas in metaphysics can be detrimental to you psychologically and intellectually if you're not ready for them. So it's saying that you should, just like someone would say, well, honey tastes sweet, so I'm going to give it to the baby, right? That would be disastrous. So too, you should have that attitude towards the highest levels of Chochmah. Yeah.
I think there's like along with it, I think there's a feeling like if it's so harmful, like is that really like something that's good? And saying, no, it's like honey, and like honey's really good,
right?
But also you can't give it like.
Okay, I hear that, but I don't think people actually have that havamina by Chochmah that the highest levels are not good.
Well, I'm saying when someone hears that it's harmful,
yeah,
then they think that indicates something wrong with that.
Okay, that could be. It's just that the pasuk seems to start off with the notion of it's speaking to someone who is like, sounds like it's speaking to someone who thinks it's pleasurable and good, and it's addressing that. It's not addressing the havamina that it's harmful, I'm going to stay away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I say it works for that. Also.
It does work for that. Yeah. I would also add that we got to stop soon. That just like honey shouldn't be a main part of your diet, then these things should be taken, these high levels of chochmah should be taken in doses. I think this is a mistake that especially philosophically prone people do, is like, they'll just spend all their time like learning Descartes or whatever, like epistemology. Like, yeah, those are important areas, but first of all, they're harmful if you're not ready for them. And they're harmful if you make them into the main thing that you're doing, but there's more to say on that. Okay, so let's stop here. We'll have to decide whether we want to do a third day on this tomorrow and maybe go through the Bachia or do Q&A. Okay, so I'll put it to a vote. Okay, have a good day.
I have one more.